Hello, everyone. My name is Giuliana Veronese. I am responsible for the Digital Solution Center in EMEA. Thank you very much for joining today in this Stefanini Trends webinar. Since the middle of March, many countries have adopted the lockdown strategy in a bid to stem the spread of the new coronavirus. Our main goal in this webinar is to discuss the main challenges of a society that is changing, that needs to reinvent itself due to the COVID-19 crisis. We have also elaborated a report that brings more details about each subject, and it will be shared with all participants. It is public and available in our LinkedIn. I would also like to explain how we elaborated this report. We have applied a perspective methodology in order to understand how the changes that we are living today will affect the future of our society and consequently of our business. We have evaluated short-term scenarios, emerging issues, emerging trends, and how we need to be prepared to the challenges that we will face. The future cannot be predicted, but can be invented. This is a sentence of Dennis Graber. And now, in this crisis moment, we need to visualize and periodically evaluate the many future versions. These are the numbers that I collected 2 days ago when I was preparing all this material. We can observe an expressive increase in the number of cases around the globe. Countries are implementing measures to slow the spread of the coronavirus, from national quarantines to school closures. More than a third of the planet's population is under some form of a restriction. And we expect a big impact in your life and business as we have never seen before. Therefore, we needed to discuss, to understand the scenarios, because people in business needed to be able to anticipate, adapt, and react fast to navigate better in this crisis. We want to start this presentation talk about a new concept, the contactless society. This new world where people are isolated, avoiding contact with each other. A third of the global population is on coronavirus lockdown. This is forcing us to develop new habits in order to avoid going to stores where there is a high risk of infection and also potential lack of inventory on the shelves. Clients are moving to online retail with longer delivery windows. People are gradually moving from offline shopping to online, and the habit won't disappear when the epidemic is over. This will have a very positive impact on the whole e-commerce industry. Consumers are evaluating products, obtaining information, and doing their purchase using digital venues. And the quotidian is becoming more and more digital. But what we are perceiving, in fact, in this moment, is an acceleration of trends that we already have identified before. In the main trends reported by Gartner this year, one of them was about the increasing of online shopping. But now we are not talking just about early adopters, people around 20, 30 years old, but a massive adoption, the adoption of the entire society. And when we talk about contactless society, we need to discuss sensitive topics, such as digital exclusive, where our sense of a normal life is migrating gradually to a digital world. Autonomous delivery trend, where we need to reinvent ways to make our available products arrive to our consumers. A global cashless society already seemed inevitable as a result of the widespread and increasing use of tap and go payment channels and digital transactions. The coronavirus is forcing enterprises to rethink the way they do business and thus of policies for security, business continuity, and remote workers. And the tech-savvy classroom that is related to the new challenge of a remote education. It's important to remind that in 2003, we had an outbreak of SARS that shocked the world as it spread swiftly from continent to continent. resulting in 8,000 infections with approximately 10% of mortality, with a devastating effect on local and regional economies. But in time of crisis, there are always opportunities. SARS was a turning point for two online retail leaders, Alibaba and JD.com. They navigated the crisis in the end of that year, and both companies launched their e-commerce platforms and devoted the bulk of their resources to expand their online business. We already know cases of other retail companies that are diversifying activities or redirecting budgets in response to the crisis. Some companies in China use the crisis as a catalyst for accelerating its existing digital transformation. They canceled offline market activities for Valentine's Day, for example, to reinvest all resources into digital marketing. Coronavirus outbreak is challenging companies of all backgrounds to think creatively about how to continue business. And the mandatory path seems to be efficient and be digital. But being present in the digital world does not seem to be enough, as companies will experience new online forms that they could not imagine before. And the key to keeping their users loyal will be the quality of their products and services and the flexibility of their operation. They need to develop the ability to mix the physical and the digital environment. Other solution that are gaining momentum is the autonomous delivery. In fact, autonomous delivery is not new in China. JD.com self-driving delivery vehicle began road testing in September of 2016. However, deploying such delivery vehicles can hardly be profitable unless it's done in areas with many end users. If the number of users is too small, it will be difficult for companies to cover both research and operating costs. Some conditions have restricted large-scale testing operations of self-driving delivery vehicles, like technological bottlenecks, gray areas in laws and regulations combined with China's dense population and complex traffic conditions. The outbreak, however, changed completely the game. Suddenly, many people were restricted to their homes and had to rely on delivery service for food and other daily necessities. In the autonomous delivery, the whole process is conducted under the supervision of security officers, who check the status of cars through a remote monitoring video and call residents when cars arrive to ensure smooth delivery completion. In the last month, we had seen magazines and journals recommendations to avoid using banknotes during the coronavirus outbreak in order to prevent transmissions. Due to this, people around the world have used more and more digital payments. In Italy, digital payments have risen 81% since the end of February. Many payments providers are falling back on contingency plans put in place to handle season bursts in online shopping, such as a Black Friday, in part by tapping additional on-demand capacity in the cloud. Merchants are dealing with challenges in handling the sheer volume of payments processing needs, whether the payment services are in-house or third parties. And what about cryptocurrency and blockchain? Bitcoin lost half of its value in a two-day plunge as a result of the coronavirus outbreak affecting global markets and driving investors towards a safety of cash. It's unclear what impact the digital asset industry will have on the medium and long term. The cryptocurrency and stock markets need to access the current situation and return to normal. How much time will it take? It is still unknown. What we can say is that the demand for virtual, fast, global, secure, cheap to use digital currencies will increase. And more than this, People and companies, they will need an architecture that enables them to trade with counterparts, with lower risk and higher security for making and receiving payments. Thanks to the modern technologies, remote working is now an option for many businesses. This would have been unthinkable in the not too distant past. But Global Workplace Analytics claims that nearly two-thirds of global companies allow their staff to undergo some form of remote work. However, this is typically used on a sporadic basis rather than permanently. With this in mind, companies may have to face a significant challenge in the near future, with permanent remote work become a more likely prospect as the virus continues to spread. How can a company effectively convey its culture? How can we have effective employee retention and employee engagement? Tools and procedures we have to be implemented that allow as much collaboration and communication as possible. Employees need to receive frequent company updates. Dedicated leisure channels need to be established on internal communication systems. And what about the remote agility? The Agile framework was born in the software development area, but became very popular and has been applied in different kinds of areas and organizations. An agile business organization embraces the agile philosophy and responds quickly and effectively to opportunities and threats. One of the main pillars of agile is co-location. Put the team work together in the same space, improve communication and also productivity. Consequently, a question arises. Can team members who work in a remote locations still be agile? The answer is yes. Of course, that we need to deal with some challenges. We need to have a set of tools that allows collaboration. We need to keep a rigid prioritization, constantly refining backlogs to ensure the team is working in the most valuable fields. We also need to work in small cross-functional autonomous teams, making it easier to change the direction when is needed. Regular meetings to help to make sure that everyone is aligned and enabled to collaborate when people are working from home. And the most important, an agile leadership focused on concrete outputs and goals, allowing teams to have a common vision to work towards. Over 1 billion students worldwide are unable to go to school or university due to measures to stop the spread of COVID-19. In almost heroic fashion, teachers have learned entirely new ways of teaching in these last weeks. On the other hand, disadvantaged groups are less able to utilize computers and internet access, which schools may rely on with remote learning. Some research that we have done about the challenge of remote learning in Europe shows that the use and availability of technology is the key, as the availability of online learning materials, devices, and the level of internet connectivity at home. In terms of internet connectivity, most countries in Europe have the capabilities that enable schools to deliver instruction using technology. Only a few countries lack this capacity. Two-thirds of school systems do not use content in education. Another 20% of countries use some digital learning resources in teaching, but only in some schools. A more 10% of countries have more robust digital learning capabilities, with some of the educational content available outside of the school. No country, according to our research, has a universal curriculum linked resources for teaching and learning, regardless of place and time. But a time of crisis is also an opportunity for all education systems to look into the future, adjust to possible threats, and build their capacity. We strongly believe that the European region has enormous potential for this to happen, regardless of COVID-19. With multiple people at home all day long, everyone will have their own broadband needs for work and leisure. Video conference for office meetings or school lessons, logging into networks remotely, or using Netflix to cure the boredom. All this mean the amount of bandwidth the average home needs is going to up significantly. Experts say that whereas the busy period for streaming households would normally last around 4 hours on a weekday even, that's now risen to as much as 10 hours a day. Therefore, many tech companies are aiming to prevent internet congestion by limiting bandwidth for applications like consumer video and game downloads. Inside of this new context, with home office, remote learning, telemedicine, mainly telemedicine, and services in the digital exclusive environment, we will require a more robust technology. And we are observing that coronavirus pandemic may fast forward 5G adoption in China. COVID-19 is presenting many challenges for healthcare systems. Telehealth or telemedicine, the virtual care platforms that allow healthcare professionals and patients to meet by phone or video chat seems tailor-made for this moment in time. Now, in this moment, beyond treating and screening potential COVID-19 patients, telehealth is an option for providing routine care to the elderly and other high-risk patients. If you can lower their exposure to the waiting room or the physician office or the waiting area of an emergency room, so they can take care of those conditions at home, we are allowing them to lower the risk of contracting that virus. Asia is the most advanced region in telehealth, so it's not a surprise that in China during the corona crisis they have explored this kind of platforms. They quickly launched online clinics to triage and treat patients across the countries. For this, they use a combination of artificial intelligence to mobile application to diagnose and monitoring cases. West China Hospital of Sichuan partnered with telecom companies working to rapidly deploy indoor and outdoor 5G networks to connect doctors with patients remotely. The high quality, low latency video enabled by 5G networks allows doctors to get a clear picture of patients without putting them in harm's way. Emergence supply chain. COVID-19 is forcing many companies, the entire industries, to rethink and transform their global supply chain model. It has already exposed the vulnerability of many organizations, especially those which have a high dependence on China to fulfill their need for raw materials or finished products. More than 200 of the Fortune Global 500 firms have a presence in Wuhan, the highly industrialized province where the outbreak originated, and which has been hardest hit. Companies whose suppliers in China are likely to experience significant disruption, even if, according to the most optimistic reports, conditions approach normalcy in China by April. This crisis illustrates that many companies are not fully aware of the vulnerability of their supply chain relationships to global shocks. Fortunately, new supply chain technologies are emerging that dramatically improve the visibility across the end-to-end supply chain and will support companies' ability to resist such shocks. The traditional linear supply chain model is transforming into a digital supply networks where functional silos are broken down and organizations become connected to their complete supply network to enable end-to-end visibility, collaboration, agility, and optimization. Leveraging advanced technologies such as the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics, and 5G, digital supply networks are designed to anticipate and meet future challenges. With these platforms, we can simulate different scenarios like war, terrorism, or regulatory changes, or supply bankruptcy. Organizations that deploy digital supply networks will be ready to deal with the unexpected situations. Air travel has been one of the hardest hit industries in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. As the virus spread to Europe, followed by the Americas and Africa, passenger demand plummeted across the board. Notably, people were also delaying buying tickets for future travel due to the uncertainty surrounding the outbreak. Several airlines have already collapsed. In fact, losses are so important in this industry that in the coming months we will not see drastic reduction in jobs, flight schedules, services on different airlines around the globe. In order to try to reduce the impact, some companies have adopted some actions, like zero fee and flexible bookings, cancel flights and keep fares travel credit, cutting the work weeks to 3 and 4 days from April through the end of June, and also additional measures in the hygiene protocols of planes. Asia is expected to be the worst affected. The World Tourism and Travel Council analyzed the previous major viral epidemics and found that the average recovery time for visitor numbers to a destination was 19 months, and forecasts that China's outbound and domestic travel markets won't fully recover until 2023. Once the outbreak is over, it could take up to 10 months for the whole industry to recover. The tourism industry currently accounts for 10% of the global GDP. It seems that it will be indispensable for these companies to think how to dramatically improve the experience of caring for their customers, ensuring future loyalty, and that can be reverted to a positive results after the quarantine. Large corporations must resist the temptation of cutting the entire innovation budget, but choose to invest their resources much more strategically. We also hope that the ongoing crisis will serve as a wake-up call for the travel industry to work together on open data initiatives during the aftermath. The idea is to give more information to travelers, and doing travelers learn and avoid potential risks of being in close contact with someone infected. Airlines, airports, hotels must break all the data silos and work together with more companies. In this part of the presentation, we have seen the impact of coronavirus in our society and also in many business verticals. Now, I would like to call my colleague Razvan Tapu to discuss the emerging business models.
Good morning. Thank you, Giuliana. My name is Razvan Tapu and I am the Chief Digital Officer for Stefanini Europe. In my role, I am responsible for updating the portfolio of offerings for Stefanini, and in this presentation I'm going to walk through a few emerging business models that we are collaborating with our customers in creating. I think it was Bill Gates who first called this coronavirus pandemic the once in 100 years type of pandemic. It is obvious to most of us that what we are going through now, it is something that the world has never seen before, because we are living two crises in parallel. On one hand, we have to deal with the economic crisis that started. As you can see on this slide, the evolution of the Dow Jones Index over the last 3 months and the latest Fitch rating saying the world economy will go down by 1.9% and the Eurozone will go down by 4.2%. On the other hand, we have a social crisis where, at least for 3 years from now, the cognitive survival instinct that should make us obey the social distancing is fighting with our primal instinct that says we are safer with our tribe and makes us seek human proximity. Whichever of the two wins is going to shape how the society will look like in the future. A probable alternative is a combination of the two in the form of group distancing. What is interesting is that the root for this model were already present even before the pandemics, where in the social network there was a growing trend called the social media group. Why is the social crisis relevant for the business, you may ask? It is because solving this riddle is a big part of sustainably solve the economic crisis. So, as you can see, there is a lot of uncertainty about the future, uncertainty that cannot be solved only by a governmental bailout package alone. Now, the good thing, if there is such a thing after all, is that whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Or, how Franklin D. Roosevelt put it, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. In the business world, this translates into a consistent observation that was valid for all the recession of the last centuries. In every recession, there are some companies that increase their profitability, and those companies continue to increase the gap between them and the competitors in the years following the recession too. A Bain & Company report published in 2019 analyzed the financial performance of more than 5,000 companies over a 10-year period, including the global financial crisis, and has revealed that 10% of the companies included in the study saw their EBIT growing at an average rate of 17% during the economic recession and go on to outperform the competitors by an average of 30% in the years to follow. And while there is no receipt to follow to be part of the winning 10%. A Harvard Business Review study revealed 3 guidelines that were followed by these companies during and immediately after the recession. And those guidelines are optimizing the finances, restructure in a smart way, and selectively play on the offensive. While the finance optimization, the automation, and process reengineering were to be expected, the thing that stands out is the equal focus must be put on updating the offering, both the current one and the new one. For the current offering, the guidelines are to create lower price version of existing products, understanding what are the products for which customers are still willing to pay full price, design creative pricing approaches such as result-based or subscription pricing, and unbundle services and offer a la carte pricing. But also, the companies should also create new offerings for the new reality by revisiting the value proposition that the company is putting on the market. Most likely, this value proposition, due to what was going on before the crisis and the social distancing or group distancing introduced by COVID, so that value proposition will have to include some elements needed to address the digital society that is being created now in an accelerated pace. The digital society reflects the result of the modern society in adapting and integrating information and communication technologies at work, home, education, and recreation. And for interacting with this digital society, there are some business models that seem to have the upper hand. The first one, the obvious one, is the appearance of new and the increased usage of existing digital channels. If the client is not visiting your store or showroom, if he's not coming to your office or production facility, a business needs to update the customer journey map and digitalize all the touch points before the sale, and potentially make the product or service available for consumption in a remote fashion too. Gartner already predicted, even before the crisis, that the number 2 technology trend for this year will be multi-experience. Multi-experience involves creating fit-for-purpose application based on touchpoint-specific modalities, like for example touch, voice, or gesture, while at the same time ensuring a consistent user experience across web, mobile, wearable, conversational, and immersive touchpoints. The same technology already exists, and what business must do is to use creativity in putting them to work. For example, we in Stefanini are already working with an auto dealer to introduce augmented reality-based drive tests, or with a global education provider to modernize their online learning platform as to cope with the volume of traffic and, most importantly, the variability of that traffic. The proliferation of digital channels will further fuel the appearance of new platforms. Same as for digital channels, the platform business model was already a hot topic before the crisis. From the most valuable startups that were disrupting traditional markets to established companies that were shifting their business model from a traditional linear to a platform-based approach, most of the poster boys of digital transformation era Uber, Facebook, Threadless, Airbnb, Nike, are already using this model. A platform is a business model that creates value by facilitating exchanges between two or more independent groups, usually consumers and producers. Platform business don't just own the means of production. Instead, they create the means of connection. In this model, the supply chain is no longer the central aggregator of business value. What company owns matters less than what it yet can connect. In a network world, scale comes from cultivating an external network that builds on top of your business. The platform business model success relies on the network externalities principle. Network externalities occur when the value of good to a user increases with the number of users that are of the same category or that are using similar goods. A small but early lead in a race to gain users, consumers, or complementary goods can create an advantage for the firm's product. This was the mechanism behind the win of Windows operating system in the war with macOS. And the world today is also having another tool that will make the most of this business model, namely machine learning. The more customer one business connects to, the more data it has about those customers, which leads to better outputs of the machine learning algorithms, which in turn will further increase the value created by that platform. For example, we are working with a financial service provider that is implementing an adaptive website which automatically adjusts the consumer journey based on the visitor profile and the navigation throughout the site until that moment, as to maximize the conversion rate. The industry vertical where this business model is most evolved and can serve as an inspiration for others is the financial services one, where the PSD2 and open banking regulation have paved the way for an unprecedented level of collaboration between the actors. Here, we see that banks are exposing their services via publicly available APIs. The banks are consuming the APIs of other banks to serve their customers, and the fintechs are aggregating the APIs of various banks in newly created use cases or revamped ones like the personal finance manager. And whilst changing the business model may seem like a luxury in this period or like too big of a risk, this is exactly why some companies, the winners that I have mentioned a few slides ago, are going to do it. Because if we look at the fourth threat to sustainability of a business model, imitation by incumbent and entrants, innovation by entrants and incumbents, unfavorable shift in the industry, and failure to execute, we realize that the first two are much less likely to materialize in this period. And for this reason, this is the ideal moment to create that initial user base in our platform, user base that will grow exponentially and make this newly created platform the dominant one in the field of activity. The open source and open innovation business model is more than just a model, it's also a mindset. Because whenever the world is faced with great challenges, like in these days, the society tends to come together for addressing them. And the platformification that we've talked about earlier is also contributing to the acceleration of open innovation. Conceptually, open innovation is a more distributed, more participatory, more decentralized approach to innovation. Based on the observed fact that useful knowledge today is widely distributed, and no company, no matter how capable or how big, could innovate effectively on its own. For businesses, open innovation is a more profitable way to innovate because it can reduce costs, accelerate time to market, increase differentiation in the market, and create new revenue stream for the company. Everything as a service, where X is a placeholder for any type of products, meaning that you don't need to sell the product itself, but charge for the usage or the output of the product, such as pay-per-use or a monthly flat fee like Uber or Netflix, respectively. In financial terms, the customer exchange capital expenses for operational expenses. It is a no-brainer that especially in the following period, where businesses will have to compete on a market with less spending budget and a lower appetite for risk, both in the business to consumer and business to business area, the companies embracing everything as a service will have the upper hand in whether they will survive and thrive in the following year. The concept is not new. 60 years ago, the Xerox company introduced this business model to encourage affordable wide-scale use of their copy machine by offices by leasing their machines. Xerox would supply the machines, services and support, allowing companies a specific number of copies included in this service and charging for the usage above or beyond that amount. Another example is Rolls-Royce, which is an early adopter of everything as a service model with its turbine engines, which charges aerospace customer a fixed price for the numbers of hours they fly. Maintenance is covered, engine downtime is reduced, and companies has a fixed, predictable cost. For everything as a service to work, the right platform will have to provide all the tools to connect the necessary sensors, store and aggregate that information, make predictions, and connect to enterprise resource planning system. A reliable platform ensures the consistent flow of information so productivity can quickly and easily be improved. The analysis of assets can increase quality and efficiency. The goal is reliable performance and meeting customer performance expectation. Everything as a service can exceed those expectations. Those were the trends that I wanted to share with you, the emerging business model that can cope with the trends that Giuliana present. And now we open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Razvan. Now we will start our question and answer session. And we have already a question here. Razvan, could you answer what are the main challenges of a platform business model?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for a question, and it's a very, very good one. I think the main challenges for platform business model have to do, and I will give four main challenges here. Number one, it has to do with creating the initial both user base and participant base, so actors in the platform. The number two challenge will have to do with the split of value between the actors in the platform, and the fine tuning is needed here in distributing the payment that we get from the users between the various actors. I think another challenge it's coming from the GDPR space and data privacy area, because those platforms to operate and to enhance their business model, they rely a lot on user data. How to select only the user data that it's GDPR friendly, it's such a challenge. And the fourth one it's the fact that right now platforms tend to operate in the business to consumer space. And I think for them to become even more powerful and even more present, they have to be more present in the business to business market. Next question.
Next question. In the context of the COVID-19 outbreak, what would you consider as the most important lessons learned? Thank you very much for your question, Mihai. Well, in my opinion, our international protocols to avoid a pandemic are very weak. We probably will see a progress in this area with different kind of procedures in the airports and other traveler points, like cameras that check the temperature, and maybe new vaccine certifications will be required. I really expect that procedures to isolate a given country or a given area when the new virus appears come up, and ability to stem the spread of this new virus. We saw in many countries how entire hospitals were infected with the coronavirus. That shows that in many places, the hygiene procedures needed to be reevaluated and changed. I have commented during the presentation that I would like to reinforce here that hotels, airports, airline companies should break the silos and collaborate in sharing data in order to easily map people that were infected. Okay, I think that these are the main lessons learned that we have until this moment.
Yeah. There is another question from Alex. and he is asking, how do you see the evolution of day-to-day retail and consumer shopping during the social distancing beside e-commerce? Again, this is something that we are already working with our clients in the retail area, and the thing that stood out is the fact that they are unable to cope with the level of demand. So most of them, most of the medium and big players already have e-commerce. What they cannot do is to cope with the volume of demand, and this is causing problems on the fulfillment side, on the supply chain side, on the delivery side. So all these areas were needed to be addressed. One of the answers that the retailers implemented is to have standard packages in which, via which they optimize their operations in the store, in the warehouse, and on the delivery end. Also, another trend that appeared was the social involvement, and we see the rise of something that is called a trend that is called the neighborhood hero, in which people are coming together and helping the let's say the most at-risk citizens, the elderly, right? So you have a guy that, or a number of guys that it's doing the shopping for his entire block or his entire vicinity, neighborhood. And the platforms that retailers are already working on building are for helping the identification of those neighborhood heroes and engaging them.
Okay. We don't have any other question in this moment, and we are in our limit to finish our webinar. Razvan, do you want to add any other information?
No, I just want to thank everybody for participating in our webinar. To mention that we already have a magazine that groups together all these trends that we talk about, and with more details on each, and to invite them for our next sessions that will be communicated in the following period.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending this webinar, and we will make our record video available soon. Okay, thank you very much.